The Indiana Fever just made a move that nobody saw coming, and it's about to tear this team apart from the inside. While everyone's been focused on Caitlin Clark's injury recovery and the upcoming 2025 season, something much darker has been brewing behind closed doors. Lexi Hull, the defensive anchor who helped transform Indiana from a lottery team into a playoff contender, is reportedly done with the disrespect. Sources close to the situation say she's already having conversations with other teams. And what's even more shocking is that Caitlin Clark herself is backing her decision. Before we dive into this explosive situation, make sure to hit that like button if you think the Fever are making a massive mistake here. What makes this situation absolutely insane is that Stephanie White just doubled down on her controversial coaching decisions during yesterday's press conference. When asked about Hull's reduced role heading into the 2025 season, White basically confirmed what everyone suspected. She doesn't value defense-first players. She literally said, and I quote, that the team needs more offensive firepower to compete with super teams like Las Vegas and New York. Translation? Lexi Hull doesn't fit her vision, despite being one of the main reasons Indiana even made the playoffs last year. The disrespect is so blatant that even Sophie Cunningham, who benefited from Hull being benched multiple times, has reportedly told management, "This is a mistake." But here's where it gets absolutely wild. Multiple league sources are now confirming that Portland, Seattle, and even the defending champion Las Vegas Aces are preparing massive offers for Hull. We're talking about guaranteed starting roles and contracts that would triple what Indiana's offering. The Aces situation is particularly interesting because they just lost two key defensive players to retirement and see Hull as the perfect replacement. Imagine Lexi Hull guarding alongside A'ja Wilson. That's a defensive nightmare for every team in the league. And get this, Becky Hammon herself has been texting Hull, telling her she deserves better than being jerked around by coaches who don't appreciate elite defense. The timeline of this disaster is absolutely damning for Stephanie White. Remember when she first took over and immediately brought in Dana Evans on a max deal? She promised Evans the starting spot without even giving Hull a chance to compete for it. Then Evans literally ghosted the team halfway through the season, stopped showing up to practice, and was still collecting paychecks while Hull was rotting on the bench. When Hull finally got her chance due to injuries, she averaged 12 points, 5 rebounds, and held opponents to 38% shooting. Those aren't just good numbers, they're elite for a role player. But as soon as other players got healthy, White threw her right back to the end of the bench. The pattern was so obvious that even casual fans started calling it out on social media. What nobody's talking about is the nuclear option that's apparently on the table. Sources within the Fever organization say Hull's agent has already informed management that if certain changes aren't made by February 1st, she's requesting a trade. Not free agency next year, a trade right now. And here's the kicker. She has a list of preferred destinations that includes every single contender except Indiana. The disrespect has gotten so bad that Hull would rather play anywhere else than continue being treated like a bench warmer by the team she helped rebuild. Can you imagine the backlash if Indiana trades away a fan favorite who embodies everything the city stands for? The PR nightmare would be unprecedented. But that wasn't even the worst part of yesterday's drama. During a team meeting that was supposed to be about the upcoming season, things got heated when Hull directly confronted White about her role. According to 3 different players who were in that room, Hull asked point-blank why she's being phased out after proving herself repeatedly. White's response? She basically told Hull that basketball is evolving and defensive specialists are becoming obsolete. The room went dead silent. Aaliyah Boston reportedly had to step in to prevent things from escalating further. This is a coach who's lost the locker room before the season even starts, and now she's alienating one of the most respected players on the roster. The Caitlin Clark angle to this story is what really exposes how badly White has mismanaged this situation. Clark and Hull developed incredible chemistry last season, with Hull often being the one to set the hardest screens to free up Clark for her signature threes. Their pick-and-roll defense was statistically the best in the league among guard pairs. Now, with Clark recovering from her ankle injury and expected back by late January, she's reportedly told management that losing Hull would be a massive mistake. Think about it. Clark is the franchise player, the one who sells tickets and jerseys, and she's essentially telling ownership that the coach is screwing up. How does White survive that kind of pressure? What's even more shocking is that this situation has apparently been brewing since October, when White first announced her roster plans for 2025. Hull wasn't even mentioned in the core group of players the team would build around. She found out through social media that she'd been relegated to a bench role before anyone had the courtesy to tell her directly. Multiple sources confirm that Hull considered not even showing up to training camp, but was convinced by veterans to give it one more chance. Now those same veterans are telling her she deserves better. And honestly, who could argue with that? The financial implications of losing Hull go way beyond just her salary. She's become a fan favorite in Indianapolis, with her jersey consistently ranking in the top 5 for sales. Local businesses have endorsement deals with her worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. The Fever would be losing not just a player, but a marketable asset who connects with the blue-collar fan base in ways that other players simply can't. And for what? To make room for offensive players who put up pretty stats but don't contribute to winning basketball? The analytics department has reportedly shown White multiple presentations proving Hull's impact on winning percentage, but she refuses to budge from her offensive-minded philosophy. Here's something that just broke this morning that makes this whole situation even crazier. The Phoenix Mercury have apparently offered Indiana a package deal that includes 2 first-round picks and a proven scorer for Hull. That's an insane haul for a player White claims doesn't fit her system. But get this, ownership is actually considering it because they're worried Hull will walk for nothing in free agency. Imagine trading away a 25-year-old defensive anchor who's entering her prime for draft picks that might not pan out. This is the kind of short-sighted move that sets franchises back for years. The locker room dynamics have gotten so toxic that players are literally choosing sides. You've got the Hull supporters, which includes Clark, Boston, and most of the younger players who appreciate hustle and defense. Then you've got White's crew, mostly new signings and offensive-minded players who benefit from Hull's reduced role. Sophie Cunningham is caught in the middle because she's friends with Hull, but also plays the same position. She's tried to stay neutral, but sources say even she thinks White is being unfair. When Sophie Cunningham thinks you're being too harsh on a competitor for playing time, you know you've crossed a line. What really pisses me off about this whole situation is that White keeps talking about championship culture while actively destroying the chemistry that made Indiana special. Last year's team had an us-against-the-world mentality that Hull embodied perfectly. She was the one diving for loose balls and blowouts, the one staying late to work with rookies, the one who never complained about her role even when it was constantly changing. Now White wants to replace that with mercenary scorers who are just chasing paychecks? That's not how you build a winner. That's how you become the Brooklyn Nets of the WNBA. The timing of this drama couldn't be worse for Indiana. They're trying to capitalize on the massive popularity boom that Clark brought to the franchise, and instead, they're dealing with internal chaos. Season ticket sales for 2025 were supposed to break records, but there's already been a noticeable slowdown since news of Hull's unhappiness leaked. Fans are literally organizing protests outside the arena, demanding that ownership intervene. Some are even threatening to boycott games if Hull gets traded. This is a PR disaster that could have been easily avoided if White had just shown basic respect to a player who earned her spot through hard work and sacrifice. But here's the real kicker that nobody's talking about yet. Hull's agent has been in contact with several international teams who are willing to offer her massive contracts to play overseas. We're talking about deals that would make her one of the highest-paid Americans in European basketball. The money is so good that Hull is genuinely considering sitting out the rest of her WNBA contract and going abroad. Can you imagine the embarrassment for Indiana if a player chooses to leave the country rather than play for them? That's the level of disrespect we're talking about here. The saddest part of all this is that it was completely preventable. All White had to do was have an honest conversation with Hull about her role, show her some respect for what she'd accomplished, and find ways to utilize her unique skills. Instead, she chose favoritism, politics, and ego over basketball. She brought in her own players, made promises she couldn't keep, and threw a loyal soldier under the bus. Now she's about to lose not just Hull, but potentially the trust of her superstar in Clark and the respect of the entire locker room. Sources close to the situation say there's going to be an emergency meeting between ownership, White, and Hull's representation this week. This might be the last chance to salvage the situation, but honestly, the damage might already be done. Hull has mentally checked out, Clark is frustrated with management, and the team chemistry is in shambles before the season even starts. If you're a Fever fan, you should be absolutely livid about how this has been handled. And if you're Lexi Hull, you should absolutely explore your options because you deserve so much better than this. The question now isn't whether Hull stays or goes, it's how much damage this situation causes to the franchise's future. Will Clark request a trade next if her friend gets pushed out? Will free agents avoid Indiana knowing how they treat loyal players? Will White even survive the season if the team underperforms? These are the questions that should keep Fever management up at night. They had something special building, and they're about to throw it all away for a coach's ego trip. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell because this story is far from over, and trust me, what happens next is going to shock the entire basketball world.